Welcome to another podcast, The Lonely Wrist. Today we have a super special guest. Probably the most exciting one for Justin so far. We have Paul. Paul, tell us who you are and tell us what you do.
Hi, I am Paul Sweetnam, and I own the UK watch brand Farah. That's basically it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good man.
Yes,
Good man. I can see the watch. Good man.
Justin's. I don't have a Farah yet, so I just decided to go for the Rolex. I really love the London, man. That whenever you dropped it, I think it was like a week or so ago.
Yeah.
I literally was so conflicted. I was like, I don't have a Tonu case watch. Well, actually, I do. I have the Speedmaster Mark II. But I don't have anything that's very modern, because typically the Tonu cases now, like, they're very modern, stylistically designed watches. Even though the case comes from the 70s. So yeah, I was super conflicted about which color and which variation. And yeah, so I think I'm set on the London, so I'm kind of jealous.
Cool watch.
I think the London's, that's my personal favorite as well. It's just classic, man. I love how the the indices and everything is just like, you've got like the smaller and larger, and it's just so neat, man. It's classic.
Yeah, the Milan is slightly ahead in terms of popularity.
Interesting. Green is the new blue. We've been talking about that. So
yeah,
a lot of people are hopping on the green bandwagon.
Yeah, I think it's I think the city names of the watches add a little bit of connection. If I scan through the orders of the Milan people, there's quite a lot of soprano sounding surnames in there.
Everything's going to Italy.
Yeah.
Some mafiosos.
Oh no, based in America, but
oh
wow,
still mafiosos.
Yeah, possibly. Certainly. The Sopranos at the bar was where we got the idea from.
Yeah. Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Justin, let's go ahead and kick it off. Let's go through a little bit of the backstory.
Sir. We're gonna put you through the ringer, Paul, and hopefully that's all
right.
Yeah. So one of my big questions, I've been a big fan of you guys since probably about 2018. So it's been a couple of years now, but how did you guys come across the name Farah Universal? Does that have any significance to you? Or significance for the brand?
Obviously, two parts, Farah and Universal. Universal Geneve, let's deal with the second part first. Universal Geneve is the total, I don't know what the reference is these days, GOAT, I think, possibly.
There you go.
Daddy, whatever, King of the Hill. Farah Universal, in my humble opinion, easily the best Swiss / world watch brand. In a key period of mid 60s to before it went pop in the early 70s, part of the quartz crisis. Unfortunately, I guess they didn't have a great balance sheet. They had amazing watches, brilliant designs, and we did certainly sniff around the opportunity of seeing if we could acquire that brand, which is currently, I believe, residing still with something in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and was not available. I mean, I think you can find the website still and see some things that perhaps are not the best Universal G, but nevertheless, the name's brilliant. So, the brand is brilliant, and Farah comes from far fairer, seafarer, which is basically to travel. And we really connected the two because Farah is about your personal journey, which, by the way, does not have to be a trip up Mount Everest. It could be just down the road.
It can be to the beach and back.
Frankly, yeah, it could be to your local Red Bar meeting or whatever. but Universal, although is out of respect for Universal Geneva, it is actually a reference to Universal for everyone. You know, really about, it's applicable for everyone. We don't exclude anyone. We consistently have questions about what are your women's watches, what are your men's watches, and, you know, we don't do either. We just do watches. So that's what it's for.
Awesome. Yeah, I respect that. I've always heard that term where you guys, you know, kind of found fair from, you know, adventurer and stuff like that. And I think that that is a good term for you guys as well. And I'm glad that you built the brand name off of that, because I think that a lot of people, of course, kind of look to your designs and your style watches. People like myself, people that are adventurers and farers that want to go out and take these watches. You know, not only to be a tool, but something that is, you know, it signifies something more, you know, something you can relate with too. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, and watches don't have to be water resistant to 10,000 meters, be able to survive a missile strike and all those type of things. You know, folks used to wear watches on the front line, you know, that were pretty basic dress watches with possibly a protective cover, but, you know, generally it was just a watch, you know. So
That's right.
it's about taking a watch, you know, with your own personal experiences, whatever that could be.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Tell us about like the early stages of the brand. Like, where did the idea formulate? Like, how did you get the courage to just go? Like, tell us a little bit about the early stages.
Very early on in my career, I was a watch buyer for all the famous brands for the duty-free business. So, you know, any of the big brands that you might care to think about in the top of the house, I bought all those things, and then subsequently had just got to think about this momentarily. Subsequently had something like a 28-year gap as I worked my way through retail businesses. And subsequently, I always wanted to do the watch and the car business. Car business would have probably bankrupted me, so I decided to do, and of course, it's not very accessible. So we decided to do the watch business. I had an idea that I wanted to utilize color a great deal and sort of bring things a little bit more up to date. You know, ours was never a journey to do historical reference matching or of any ilk whatsoever. Not saying it's a good or bad thing, just it's not our gig. And of course wanted to get some watches into production sort of by next week, and subsequently found that it all started slowing down when we went to Switzerland, and then the cost of mechanical watches. And I was advised by Kurt, the then CEO of Reventa Hennigs, you know, have a go aesthetically with good quartz movements, and then if you get a response, come back and try mechanical. And I sort of thought about that and went, you know, I'm going to just have a go with mechanical. So he took me down into a anonymous cupboard with nothing on the door. I opened the door and there was like, I don't know, endless files, all neatly, you know, as you would imagine with a Swiss, on shelves. And he said, Paul, these are all the projects that people came to us to make a watch and they never made a watch.
Wow.
So I would just, you know, be careful, be cautious, you know, don't bet the farm on it, kind of thing, and have a go. He liked the initial designs of the Bonetto and Carter, you know, subsequently, which became favorites, and we sold out frequently, and we still get asked for them today. And they were successful. So we subsequently started with an automatic watch in very late 16, something like December 16. The Hopewell, the Beagle, and the Endurance, particularly the Beagle, which was lime green or apple green.
Right, yeah.
Numbers out of white resonated, and we got a good amount of press coverage and a good response from the consumer, and sold them out pretty quickly. And then subsequently, we added a GMT in April 17, which is the now very well known Lander.
That's right.
Which is still in production and still in demand, and has had you know, a number of iterations. We have the Lander Midnight, we have the Lander Original in 36mm. They're all as, you know, touch wood, as popular as each other. And, you know, whenever you see a Lander on a pre-owned market, you go and look one day afterwards and it's gone. So,
Yeah.
you know, these things are popular and it resonates. Do you know what? It does one of the things that perhaps maybe not everyone thinks about when designing a watch. It's very legible and you can tell the time easily. You know,
I've always been a big fan of that, and that's always been one of my favorite watches. I generally am not a person who buys into a lot of hype, but generally, if something is hyped, it's probably for good reasons. And
yeah,
so I remember seeing the Lander and being like, why do they have like, because you know, I came around when the first iterations were there, and I was like, man, they're already on their second one. I was like, they must be doing really well. And then over the time, you know, you guys had the third. I think you're on your fourth now.
yeah.
But it's a beautiful watch for sure. I think the Seacoast is probably my favorite, but I've always enjoyed that legibility of it. You know, you have like the sunburst color, and then
Yeah.
it's just super legible, which I love.
And you know, in the early days, a lot of those dial colors, and in this specific instance, the Lander, it came from Fjord Green, which was a late 50s Porsche color that we then added Sunray to get the iridescence to it, but because it was a flat color on the Porsche color chart. But that's where it came from. And then obviously after the Lander, we just carried on, and you know, demand just grew, demand for different things grew, and we like to try different complications, you know, moon phase, world timer, internal moving bezels. We're big chronograph fans, you know. I've always got too many chronograph designs in the drawer, me and Mike Heath, who works with us on designs.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's just a huge amount of things that you can turn your hand to in watches, which is one of the things I would say. You know, just do something original if you can. I mean, in context, right? It's going to be round, it's going to tell the time. So by definition, there's a lot of those things. But aesthetically, you have your own opportunity to do your own thing.
All businesses were started, in my opinion, because you spotted a gap, I guess, in the market, right? So usually every founder story has and exploits that gap. So what was the gap that you guys saw? You know,
honestly, so I'm going to slightly be contrary here. I didn't see any gap at all. You know, in truth, I liked a lot of the Gallet and Universal Geneve watches, but you've got to live with the reality, a bit like classic cars, is that there is limitations to their use, right? And so we just, if you like, wanted just to provide something in that flavor. But you know, watches or any good product market is oversubscribed. You know, I would recommend that you'd have to be a very brave person to be going into a market where there was a huge, great opportunity. You know, because you have to have something totally unique. So whether it's handbags, shoes, watches, cars, this is a market with a lot of people in. And by definition, it's going to be, you know, you're going to have to go in fighting to get your space. But we don't see an opportunity as much as we wanted to do it, right? You know, it's a fun thing to do. It's it's incredible, the watch community. It's one of the most amazing communities I've ever come across. And I'm live permanently in the car community, and I would say, pound for pound, it's, you know, it's generally a more positive experience than the car community.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I've pretty much had nothing but great times, you know, being within the watch community so far, and everybody is always very welcoming, which is great. I feel like people kind of pursue their own paths for, you know, the watches that they love and, you know, they acquire, and nobody really judges, which is pretty cool. Oh, awesome. So what do you guys would say sets Fair apart from the other watch brands within the market?
I mean, look, I would say, and Blake Butner at Worn and Wound, and they had this discussion when we did a small piece of podcast, I think, if I remember rightly, and basically his point was to me is I can stick my thumb over Fairy Universe and pretty much any watch you do, and it still pretty much resonates to me as one of your models, and I think that we try hard to do that. Even the recent Tonu watches, although they're quite unique in their appearance, I use that word unique with a sort of light touch, because what is really unique these days? But they're still obviously fair. In our opinion, they're still obviously fair, and nothing makes it into the three-dimensional world, even in prototype form, if it doesn't qualify as fairer DNA. So what makes us, I guess we I don't think it's unique per se, but I think that we're in a sort of pool of people that probably do similar things. But it's always very interesting to me when I'm across the desk, or chatting to a fairer customer, we always ask, what other watches do you have in your bag? And we hear everything. So, whether it's any of the traditional big brands, to its something more recent, or to its I own an Autodromo, Unimatic, or whatever it is. I mean, it tends to be a little bit more contemporary in its association, and we have a lot of art type people in our customer brief, but we have a lot of different. It would be difficult for me to tell you what the fairer customer was, because it's so broad.
That's good though. I mean, it's nice that you have a demographic that's that diverse. And I'd probably take it as a compliment. I'm sure you do, but for people to be a luxury brand, watches, who are owning Rolexes and Pateks and things like that, and then they're coming to you and saying, "Hey, I own your watch as well." I mean, you're standing with some giants up there. I think that's really neat.
Yeah. I mean, look, with the greatest respect to them, they are leading the way. They're forging the level of interest, and we're just happy to ride on the coattails of that, right? But provide something that we think is just maybe a little different, right?
I was originally exposed to your brand by Justin, ironically. I was at Wind Up in Chicago, I think it was a few months ago. And then I was in San Fran in April, or I think it was the end of April. But something that I personally noticed, to actually give you a little bit more credit, is I went to every single brand. And first of all, boutique watch brands, they don't have the same amount of distribution, obviously. So it is nearly impossible for us to get your product in our hand, right, without some type of event like Wind Up. But I went around to every single brand, and I was on a mission to buy a watch, right? And every single watch that I held felt the same, which was super weird, like super, super, super weird. But and then, to give you more credit, I went to your brand, your booth, and everything felt so different. Like they actually felt like a quality timepiece. Everything else felt like hollow and didn't have much to it. But then, so I felt quality, which is hard, because I come from selling 30 brands and some of the most expensive watches in the world.
Sure.
And then what's also super unique is they're very playful. Like every watch has its own spirit. They're playful in color, playful in lume, and I couldn't find any other brands that I really resonated with. But there's multiple watches in your portfolio that speak to me, and at some point I hope to acquire. So to push back on you, quality, lume, the playful spirit, and just the DNA, the identity, I think sets you a lot apart. very differently from everything else because everybody's doing these vintage divers with faux patina and the California dials and the wire lugs, or like it's like, all right, guys, I've had enough.
Well, I appreciate that. Perhaps shamefully, though, we have a California dance.
No, there's nothing wrong with California dials. Like, I actually love California dials, but it's starting to get played out.
I
Right?
honestly believe, though, if you look at Bradley's stuff at Autodromo, fantastic. His Group B watch is super cool. A new rising star. Well, I don't think he's a new, but he's certainly a young rising star. Studio Underdog. Richard does great work. So I think there's folks that are really doing excellent stuff. And certainly for me, the thing that appeals to me when I see any of these things, Laurent Ferrier, just to show that we're not always looking here. Amazing. That's to me the true sort of god of the current horology world. Someone shows me some of these famous names, I look at them like, oh yeah, no, very nice. And then I see a Laurent Ferrier and I go, oh my god.
Ironically, at that show, I picked up an Autodromo. Ironically, so I picked up the light blue Group B chronograph, the Hodinkee collaboration.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful watch. It's an absolutely stunning watch. It doesn't get much wrist time. So I ironically have like close to 85 watches now, last I counted. So
that's called a problem.
Yeah, that's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
So kind of touching back on what Blake was saying, sorry to interject on you, Blake. I completely agree. And I think that's what had originally kind of turned me to your brand, a couple years ago, whenever I started looking for watches, is the character and everything that you guys build into your watches. I feel like there is a story, there is a soul to every watch. And I kind of wanted to touch back on, if you go on you guys' website today, you've got all of your, of course, most recent releases. I remember, falling in love with like the original Hecla, which was the super compressor style. And you go on the website nowadays and it's no longer there. Do you guys anticipate doing anything where you bring back some of these retired models and maybe have a second iteration, or how does that work for you guys?
It's interesting because there's a particular watch, the Lander chronograph. The first one came out around 2018. Number of people in the watch community wear one. Zach Weiss wears one from one in his personal watches. I'm talking about.
Yep.
We had a police motorcycle rider in the US who unfortunately came off his bike with his Lander chronograph and sent me a box of bits and said, "Can you rebuild it?" And so this sort of thing gets emotional. But we made 100, and we especially said it was an LE at the time. I think it would be tough for us to go back and go, do you know, guys, I could sell 500 of these, so I'm going to make them. And it sort of, if you like, pushes us to be creative and find out, the next thing to do. With regards to bringing back, if you like, earlier models, we have got a lot retired now. I mean, a lot. And I get, the Ponting 1 come back, the Ponting 2, which we only did 50 in a very unusual turquoise and sort of French blue color, come back. Will this come back, that come back? And the truth of it is we're not going to bring any of them back because I guess we just want to keep going forward. And one of the parts that we like of our business is we make small batches. We do run the gauntlet of, heated emails of why is it out of stock again and all this type of stuff. But the truth of it is, to make as broad a range of models as we do, you need to somehow get the dimensions right. So we shallow the quantities a bit and broaden out the choice. So we, in the aqua compressors, for instance, that we just put back the Endeavor this year, but we changed one subtle thing on it. We made it twin titanium crowns.
Right.
We changed some of the detail on the dials that we've got feedback from real divers who wanted just some extra clarity on the dial, and we changed the background black to deep black. But we also have a fully lumi white dial and a red aqua compressor as well. They just weren't ready, so we let the Black Endeavour go, and they will come back as the aqua compressor family in spring 24.
Oh,
so
cool.
Are we bringing back the Heckler? No, but the aqua compressor range has lived from 2017 August to, you know, and it's not going to die soon. And we just put, I don't know, another 40 Endeavours up, because the batches, as it comes up to Swiss break, get really small because they all want to go on holiday. We put all up and they're gone again, you know, so it seems to work, and it also gives people, you know, the choice that they want at the time. Inevitably, we always have a backlog of folks chasing things. Moon phase watch, world timers, lander,
Right,
is typical. You know, that if I could show you the number of emails we get for a world timer every day.
put them up, Paul. Let's see them. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, God bless Urban Gentry, who made a single video about it, who caused the problem. So
I don't know if you guys have ever seen Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey back in the day.
yeah,
Where he pretends to be God. He's answering all the emails from people back when it's like Yahoo. That's my first inbox.
Reply all.
Yeah.
Reply all.
What I actually follow your search term on eBay. So, you know, you can do that, so you can see when new stuff pops up and it's like, oh, okay, cool, there's 3 new Pharaoh watches that was posted.
Yeah.
And I don't see really too much coming back, you know, like
No.
it seems like the people that buy your watches hold on to them, love them, and appreciate them, which, you know, it's hard to say for a lot of other brands, right?
I think that's typical. I mean, I think we get a bit of buyer's remorse, like any business, to be honest. And we also get folks that, you know, sell the watch and then contact us 3 months later and say, you know, I didn't mean to do that. How can I get hold of one? And we try to do our best to get hold of them, particularly if they're gone. But you do not, I mean, we keep a check on that. You never see a lot of Pharaoh watches on Chrono24, eBay, etc., etc. And also, it's very typical of us and our deliberate strategy, because of the choice. You know, because we're, if you like, not all one particular, that horrible word, genre. We're not all one genre. It tends to mean that we have got quite a lot of customers, like a, you know, a really good amount, with 5+ Pharaoh models in their collection. If they reach to 85 watches, I don't know, but certainly in that. Certainly, it's very common to bump into a customer with 5 or more. We actually have 5 customers who bought every single watch we've ever made.
Wow.
Which is a lot.
That's dedication.
Yeah.
Justin, are you going to tell them the truth about your love for the brand? Like, I'm waiting for it.
You mean like how I got started?
No, not really. I think so. I'm going to throw Justin under the bus. He has a fan account for his watch.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's the
okay.
Yeah, I've got like an Instagram account and stuff. It's the Fairer.wear, and I was like, that just rolls off so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I've only have the Ainsdale, which is, you know, the first generation Ainsdale.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I mean, I'm a photographer in my side job. You know, I keep my camera, you know, around my office at all times.
Yeah.
Photos, and I fell in love with the colors of you guys' watches, and I guess if, you know, I'll go ahead and say this too, because it's probably what Blake's insisting for. But I had received this watch as a wedding gift. And me and Blake used to work with each other for, you know, a couple years at the time. And in my downtime, during, you know, my work hours, I was always researching your brand. I mean, I had it bookmarked. I had all the models that I was like, I'm going to get these one day. I'm going to get those. And then Blake saw this and he's like, hey man, you know, you're getting married coming up. What are you thinking about? I'm like, man, I would love one of these watches. It's like, which one are you thinking about? I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I really like the Ainsdale. I'm like,
a little different. It's a little different.
Yeah.
No. Ironically, I set him up. because I was like, dude, I'm gonna buy a Ferrer, man. Like help me decide, you know. And then I was like, dude, if price wasn't an option, like which Ferrer would you buy? And then he was like, dude, Ainsdale all day. And I was like, all right, man. Like, yeah, let me think about it. Let me talk, let me talk to my lady. And then so I reached out to all the groomsmen, and like we had like a group chat, for his bachelor party. And I was like, yo, send me money. Like, just send me money. We're gonna buy this watch for him. And when it came in, like it shipped to my house, and I was just so excited just looking at it. Like I left it on my kitchen counter, like we didn't really like do much of the presentation, but I literally like cat out of the bag. I was like, I can't keep this as a secret for very long.
He was like,
So
this thing is sick, dude. Like, I've got to give it to you. So it was supposed to be a, here you go, you're married, here's your gift. And instead he gave it to me like 2 months ahead of time.
Well, what I never told him was if it kept sitting on my countertop, then I would have just worn it, And so I was like, dude, I got to get this out of here.
Yeah, we sold a lot of those, but ETA wrote to us and said they're discontinuing the movement. So, and we were the only customer for that movement in the world at that time.
Really?
Yeah, because it's super fast rating watch at 48,000, right? Because of the flyback. Why have a flyback if it's slow, right? It's not very functional. But yeah, I think there are 4,000 flyback of the 4 iterations.
Right. That's impressive.
And again, we get requested for that all the time. But
yeah, that was actually one of the big reasons why I loved it. I mean, I loved the blue and the orange and yellow, the play of colors. But I was a huge fan of that movement. And like Blake said, he's like, any money, what would you choose? And I'm a car guy personally through and through. I drive a 98 Trans Am. It's got some
cool.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. I had a little bit of work done to it and, got it running good. But long story short, I'm like, man, that thing has a flyback chronograph in it for a quartz movement that, retails for, what was it, $650 or somewhere along the line.
$625. Yeah, it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, I was so impressed. So when he gave me that watch, like I said, it was about 2 months before I got married. I ended up doing all of my marriage photos before the wedding actually happened with that watch. I made it a big deal to my photographer. I'm like, got a new watch. It was my gift for my groomsmen. So to tie it back in, it is a very important watch to me, not only because of the love and recognition that your brand has for me personally, but because of the sentiment of how it was given to me. And I'll forever be grateful for that. So I don't know if that warms your heart.
It's interesting you say that. We sell a lot. I mean, a lot of watches for weddings, a lot. And since we've done the Lander at 36 and 39, I can't tell you how many duo watches we've sold.
Yeah,
his and hers.
Yeah, and always engraved. Oh my God. Always engraved, yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. I didn't know that so many people did that with the duos. That makes sense though, and I know you had mentioned that before. Not really having like a male or female audience. Yeah. Everything is just kind of it is what it is based off sizing. So that's pretty impressive that you guys are doing that and actually selling them as duos.
yeah, quite a lot. It's extraordinary. Yeah.
Wow. I personally. Go ahead, Blake. I'm sorry.
No. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I personally, I'm a big fan of any watches that they have like a salmon or a rose colored pink dial. We were just talking about this the other day, and Blake was like, oh, if any watch that's on your radar right now, what are you interested in? And I was like, man, the Ferrer Meredith, like I love that thing. I love the salmon color. Yeah, exactly, gone, yeah. And but it's beautiful, and I feel like men or women, doesn't matter, but I like that you guys push that boundary with a lot of your color palettes because it opens up that market.
However, there is a version with the structure of that Meredith dial and the blue numbers with the raised lumicast. It's coming out in the GMT in the classic case before, I want to say November, something like that.
Okay.
Nice.
It's super cool. It's super cool. I've not seen too many GMTs in salmon Dahl. So yeah, we're excited by that. Salmon is very popular. We have it copper salmon on the Durham on the cushion case.
Yep.
Big seller. But the Meredith was fantastic. But unfortunately, working with the Dubois Dupois guys, it's quite challenging, right? You know, in terms of lead time. Sit down. When would you want to make this watch next year? When can we have the movements? 2.5 years time. You know, that's tricky.
Those are modules, aren't they? Like they're just
Yeah.
modules.
But those guys are specialist module makers for some of the biggest, you know, brands in the land. I mean, that they're a special group of people, super talented. They have modules for everything. You know, literally for anything you can imagine.
I had my first ever luxury timepiece was a Speedmaster reduced to 39 millimeter. It had the base movement with the Debris de Poix module.
Yeah.
And actually, ironically, one reason why I got rid of it was because serviceability. You know, a lot of watchmakers, you know, when they rip it open, they're like, what the hell? You know, because the mainspring will come down and they're like, what the hell? I don't even want to touch this thing. Or they'll charge, you know, an arm and a leg a little bit more to, because essentially they're working on two movements, you know?
Yeah, we've like many things in the watch world, we've had to deal with, we have an inbox for myth and legends, and that's one of the that's one of the many myth and legends you get. Oh, I've heard these are really difficult to service and all that stuff. In truth, you know, it's attached to an SW300, which is, you know, sort of all you want for reliability. So the chronograph module is then done by Dubois, it's their specialist business. So if you're gonna do such a combination, you're in good company with those two folks.
Interesting. And I was going to ask you as well, while we're on that subject, Paul. I'm assuming just the market and everything changing over time. I know that you guys used to use a lot of the ETA movement styles in your watches, and I've been noticing that you guys are using a lot of Sellita nowadays. Is it because of the access to the ETA movements, or what made you transition into using those movements?
Well, the first thing I would say, just in reference to Sellita, possibly the most I don't like the word disappointing, but I'm going to use it. Possibly the most disappointing recurring reference we see across the world on the, you know, just underneath the articles. It's disappointing that they're using a Sellita movement, blah, 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 blah. I wonder if any of these keyboard warriors have ever been to the Sellita factory, which I go to frequently. I mean, it is like a spaceship scene in the latest James Bond movie. Those guys have got incredible technology. They make their own hairsprings, which, by the way, is an incredible skill. And then when you look round Sellita's factory, you notice all the machines have got this sort of light color blue around the base. And so you ask, why is that then? And then Sellita tell you that they make the machines that make the movements, which is an incredible rooted capability, technical tour de force, amazing ability. And, you know, so we wanted to do a mono pusher GMT. You know, that's an attractive combination of things. Wow. Basically, the only option in the entire world for us was Sellita. So
Sellita gets a lot of hate.
I don't understand it. And also, there is a particular floor in Sellita's building, and all the Sellita building doors are well named. You know, the SW200 floor, you're on the SW500 floor, the family, the SW300 floor. And then there's an area of the building with less signage on the doors.
Secret projects.
These are brands where the movements are going in the left and coming out on the right with a slightly different identity.
So I heard pretty recently their factory was actually damaged. You know,
a roof came off a neighbor's building and hit a part of their admin office, which, although obviously serious, and the incident was hugely serious, but fortunately, apart from the one poor chap who passed away, There was they were on their holiday, otherwise it would have been a really serious incident. But we have had no interruption of
Okay,
supply.
that was
Those guys are. It's a really very serious business. I understand that people want to have an opinion about things, but I would just encourage or urge everyone to get an informed opinion and take a trip to Salita. I'm sure they'd welcome you in to have a look round, and you'd need 2 days to get around the whole complex.
I actually love Salita. I actually prefer the Salita movements over the Edda because they've taken some of the flaws that Edda has, like the notorious flaws, and they fixed them. They fixed them, and then one of them, they added the extra jewel for that reason, right? And and they're just so easy to work with, like in terms of serviceability. I have, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 Salita watches, and I don't really care about any of that stuff.
We also use Le Jeu Perret, which is fantastic as well, because the 3-hander now has a Le Jeu Perret G101 non-date movement special thing they do for us.
That's cool.
You're getting 68 hours out of a movement. You're getting a great
so thin.
You're getting a great range of accuracy. Yeah, we're in the process of doing a new dress watch. I hate that word dress because it sort of really narrows everyone's perspective for what could it be, and it won't be as you would imagine with us. It's not going to be what you would expect. And we're using the D101, which is 2.9 millimeters thick.
Wow.
So we're going to have a watch. In the early days, we had a cushion case watch that's that was 7.9 millimeters thick. And although our new cushion case is very, very popular, extremely popular, we wanted to have a watch back in the mix that was under 8 mil in total height.
That'll be awesome. Get it under the cuff. That's nice.
Exactly. 38 mil, under 8 mil. Very attractive watch.
How thick were the what was it, the Lansdale, the Hudson,
they were 7.9.
7.9. Okay, so it'll be around that same height.
Pretty much identical. Yeah. Cool. Which I think, by the way, we were probably early in that being accepted. Not in high horology, but in general demand. But now, we get lots of people saying, "Oh, I've heard about the Lansdale or the original Stanhope and all that. I like your cushion watches, guys, but I want a 7.9 one. Where do I get one?" There's none for sale, really, or the Hudson, which is the third one. Hence why we want to do this. We have a general view that dress is going, again, I hate the word dress. It narrows the perspective. Day watches, let's say, they're going to broaden their appeal and they're going to become much more popular, I'm sure.
I'm curious to learn a little bit more about like your design philosophy. Obviously every watch is very distinctive. So it sounds like you draw inspiration from the automotive industry. Is that a fair assessment? Where?
It is, but the London, the original design came from a casting unit in Stoke Pottery, which is the bit that you put in the oven and it gives the shape of the pot. And the Milan was, we were driving through Italy, stop the car, run up someone's personal driveway, apologies, take a picture of a pot in the I guess just outside the front of the house, and then that's how we used the graduated dark green to light green because it was on the glaze of the pot. And then the Paris was from the original Parisian street signs, which are now darker blue, but they did start off lighter blue with a white out. That's just a sort of bizarre set of references. The moon phase came from, I bought some Japanese watercolor prints, not obviously the originals, 17th century watercolors, which is where we got the colors for the moon phase, the Eddington, the Burbage and the Haley. That's where they come from. We have got a lot of car references. but we don't limit it to anything. You know, the person I work with, Mike Heath, and Mike is, you know, John Lennon or Paul McCartney, whichever one you want to reference, and I'm the other one. And you know, we're just like them. We're not as talented as they are, but we're just like them in that we work in separate spaces better and then join up. And Mike's a fantastically capable person who's an incredibly able individual and also a great photographer. And I'm sort of conceptualize and colors and where the watch is and what the case is. I do the case separately without figuring out what should go in the watch. And then Mike is a proper designer, and so we're of general things. So we're people that have an aesthetic viewpoint applied to watches rather than watch people the reverse out. And I think you get a different outcome that way.
Interesting. Now, do you guys have any unique challenges or anything that you face within the watchmaking industry? And how do you guys overcome them?
Sorry, carry on.
Just gonna say, how have you guys overcame that, the challenges that you guys have faced in the watch industry? Because I know everybody has their own stuff that they have to deal with. Of course, we've been talking about the term micro brand. I'm sure a lot of people still throw that around. But how have you guys overcame those challenges?
I mean, look, you get some prejudices which we don't spend any time on, because what can I do about it? You know, the inevitable prejudice people generally level at us, which gets leveled at many of our peer group, is why wouldn't you just buy an Amiga and then you don't lose any money? And our general response to that is that you should always buy what you like, and it's really as simple as that. You know, we're buying watches because they're an enjoyable thing to own, collect, use, look at, whatever your reference is. And it's an unbelievable technology that has survived just an unbelievable amount of time. And it's just like the Weeble that won't fall down, isn't it? I mean, it just will not go away. And now that there are many, many more active ladies in the watch business, and the inclusivity has opened up to that regard, which I think is fantastic. Lots of folks like Kathleen at Red Bar have done a champion job at encouraging, to be interested in the watch world. I think that's just fantastic for watches, because it has existed to this point with only a marginal exposure in that area. Now it can be much bigger. That's a much bigger, buying power group than the male. And I think it's fantastic for the watch industry, and I don't see it ever going away. It's if it's jewelry, if you want to make that reference, whatever it is. But I think watching the mechanical movement of a watch, not to preclude quartz watches, because I think there's great quartz watches as well. I think it's just the evergreen hobby that doesn't seem to disappear, and as with the community aspect of it, and then the social media that has sort of been like a natural fit, like the magical slipper that we're looking for whose foot goes in that, and it ended up being social media and the watch goes into it, and bingo. Right. I mean, it's really worked. So, and I think it gives, I should say, millions of people across the globe a lot of fun. So
yeah,
fantastic.
I was gonna say, I can probably vouch for most of us and say that just the intricacies of how watches work internally is probably what got us interested in watches to begin with. I was the same way, man. I saw it and I was like I grew up, of course, always hearing of, simple watches and quartz watches and Timex and things like that. And then I learned that there was so much more to watches in general. And not just any certain guideline. There's so many different avenues that you can push through with the different types of mechanical movements and things, and how you can decorate them and how you can counterweight them, and your submersibles. I love that side to watches, and honestly, I'll probably love watches until the day I die, until my time is up.
There's some new technologies now. I'll just lean across here. The vapor technology, which we use to color the rotors.
Yeah.
This was fantastic. So I met a surgeon in Switzerland that had red handles on his knives, and I said, why do you have that? And he said, well, we send them into a sort of central cleaning place, and then of course I know they're mine. I'm not sure how much of that was true, but I was talking at the airport, and he said, I think maybe he wanted me to go away. But so I went back to our partners and said, here's an interesting thing. Can you vapor color parts of metal? And they said, yeah, you could do that. So that's how we studied the rotors. And then it came back to us that the supplier said to us that, when we asked them what Pantone references they needed, they said, you don't need Pantone references. We can match the exact color
No way.
of anything.
That's awesome.
Because as the first customers will see when they get these watches, these aren't similar colors to the dials. They're the exact colors of the dials.
Wow.
So I think that's very interesting. And with Le Jeu Perret, I currently have 3 movements sat over there in the corner, and everything in the movement is pink, lilac, or blue. The whole movement is colored.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Can you talk about maybe like your inspiration? Like what's the, we've talked about the design process a little bit, but like how does it come from a concept to a tangible product that somebody can actually wear? Like, do you guys probably illustrate it, and then do you guys flip it around the workshop? I mean, like, take us through that process, if you will, because I mean, again, we've already talked about your unique design language, but can you take us on that journey with you, if you can?
Yeah, I mean, like an idea pops up. And at every stage, by the way, it's a bit like a sports competition. At every stage, there's a knockout, something goes, right? So you come up with an idea in whatever that was, and in the instance of the
You're good.
in the instance of the moon phase watches, to me, I've always wanted to do a moon phase watch, and back in the mid '80s, moon phase were extremely popular when I was buying watches. So it's just resonate in the head. Plus, moon phase is one of the oldest complications in watchmaking, clockmaking, for obvious reasons, the sort of religious significance of the moon and worship and all that stuff. So I was walking along the River Seine in France, and looking at these Japanese watercolors that, obviously not real pieces, but you're in Paris, so you're a bit giddy, and you're going to pay too much for a print and
That's
then get
right.
home and go, oh well, whatever. But I had a specific purpose. I wanted to find the colors, particularly the pink Eddington color and the Burbage blue. And the Japanese have a lot of watercolor paintings of the moon in a zillion different colors. Then you subsequently find the NASA wheel. There's a NASA wheel with the 28 colors of the moon. You go, okay, so this is not perhaps as mystic as, there's some reality here as well. And so we start messing around with the design, and then think, we should go and find if there's a movement. And then there is a Solita movement, but it's got a really small moon phase aperture, so we're not interested. We're chatting along with the guys, and they go, we make a bigger aperture one. So bingo, that comes up. And we're, deciding what case to go in, and we decide subsequently we want to put it in the cushion case, but we want to delineate between the cushion case and the moon phase.
That's right.
So there's a Dunhill lighter on our desk from World War One that is worn out on the side, and we copy that on the CNC machine through a digital relay and then print it on 3D printing. And that comes out to be perfect because we want to rub your finger along it and feel a smooth surface, not not like the original lighters would have been, which would have been sharp. And then we just, then working with Mike goes into a sort of dark room and comes back with ideas on the numerals, the markings, the hands, and that goes back and forth a lot of times, but super quick. Neither of us have got patience. So if someone sends a message at 7:06, it's not like 3 days later, like 40 minutes later, it comes back with, I think this color's better, and it works in a very iterative way like that. And then and then you go through prototype, which is a 3D printed thing, working with Reventa Henix, who do a huge amount of work with a lot of very big brands, which I'm not allowed to mention. But of course, it means their facilities are fantastic. We get to use them all. So you're able to make CNC 3D printing sort of cases, and then literally on the go with the guys. I don't like this. Let's change it. Do it again. And then we get a metal case, and I wear the metal case without anything in for like 2 or 3 weeks. Is it comfortable? And to the point of it disappears. It's on my wrist, but I've forgotten about it. Yes, then It's passed. Then we put the movement in. We don't ever make prototypes that aren't working. So we've got a stack of working prototypes that aren't in the finished materials or anything. But you've got to have a working prototype to really know.
Get that feel.
And then the working prototype takes forever because you've got to get the dials right. You've got to get the depth of the 3D applied numbers. You've got to get the hands right. The colors we use are really challenging, and we take a Pantone color and then we put black or white in it so that it can't be just copied. It's just not a Pantone color you can copy. So we make it our own. And then after all that, once you press go, you then wait 9 months to a year before the watches are made, which is just extraordinary. Because the lead time of the movements, the lead time of the dial makers, if you want to use a good dial maker, you better get used to queuing. Because those guys are really the blockage in the supply chain at the moment, the dial makers.
Interesting. Yeah, I was gonna. I love that you went into the detail about how you guys decide on certain features for your designs and some of your stuff. Would you say that's generally how you guys design your watches? Is you pull inspiration from things that are around you? You going to seeing those Japanese prints and things like that, and getting your color ideas, or do you already kind of have those watches slated and then you're like, oh, that'll match that? Like, how do you pull it up?
I think very few times have we started off with, we want that watch. Probably the mono pusher, just because for me, the mono pusher is the god of all.
The goat.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the unbalanced button, but actually extremely logical of just start, stop, reset. But apart from that, pretty much everything has started off as a color or something before we've gone to what movement will this best suit and what size and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome.
Do you guys have anything? And I mean, you've talked briefly about what you're working on. Do you guys have anything exciting that you guys are getting ready to drop, or
maybe like collaborations or something?
Well,
collaborations.
We generally don't do collaborations. We've done one with Worn and Wound because those guys are like horological angels. They're like good guys, and they're really easy to get on with because they're all called Blake or Zach. But no, it's not a general thing. We get asked to do quite a lot of them, but have sort of steered away because of our heavy hand of how we like to design things. Then what sort of excitement do we have? We know what we're doing all the way through till autumn 25.
Wow.
I mean, because you've got no choice, because the
lead time.
You've got to start the development process off, and then it may die halfway through. You may be wearing the prototype and you go, actually, I'm not particularly feeling this, and I'm afraid it's got to go in the never made it drawer, which happens as part of the process, particularly the colors we use. Colors I'm thinking of using ochre, olive, and and something else, and then when it gets to the watch, you go, oh my god, what was I thinking? That
They sounded good on paper.
Some people may say that about some of the things we made, but that's that's our choice. But yes, we have exciting stuff coming. I've mentioned it already. We have finished we did the mono pusher and the Cobb and the Sea Rave, and we undermade them, not deliberately. We undermade them. We didn't realize, particularly the Cobb pulsometer, which we sold a lot to doctors, believe it or not. The mono, how can we have the mono pusher back? And then, I was a fan of the Hoyle Otavia, the combination chronograph GMT, but it's a thick watch, even back for the 70s, it's a thick watch, 14.83. Anyway, so we have done a GMT mono pusher at 13.3, so it's manual, otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it. But with the power reserve that you get on manual movements now, that's pretty much a sort of non-discussion. So a combination of a GMT and a mono pusher together, I think is, it's slightly counter to what I've just said, with simplifying, but actually that particular watch came out in that simplification time. So, it was for purpose, I guess. But yeah, we have from our perspective, a lot of exciting stuff, including when's next? End of September, I think, is the next.
Okay.
Awesome.
So now, super soon.
Yeah, I was about to say that's coming up quick.
Yeah,
I'm sure I'll hear about it firsthand. I pretty much see every one of you guys' drops. So, so how has the feedback from everybody, from your customers, influenced the evolution of you guys' watches over time? Do you guys take your feedback and kind of put that into the next project, or do you just kind of say, hey, appreciate you supporting us, we're going to move in our own direction, or how do you go about that?
I think you always, someone very bright gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So I think it's always a good idea to listen to what everyone says. But you've got to be careful with it because, the specific requirements of an individual that come across, have you thought of doing X, Y, Z? I mean, we would have 1 million options in our range. Folks don't tend to say we would like to see X, Y, or B. They tend to say, bring back the Lander chronograph, or can you make this in 36 mil? Can you make that in 30? Or why isn't it an automatic? Or why haven't you moved the date window from there to there? And we moved the date window on our GMT bezel as a direct input from customers. We moved it from 3 to 6.
Wow.
I like the original 3, but the 6 was very popular, so they were right, I guess. But in terms of aesthetics, no, we sort of go deaf. If you're gonna make a watch like the London or the Milan or the Paris, you have to be very single-minded in what it looks like. And I think the tonneau watch, or 2-hand timekeepers or day dress watches, what's interesting about them is sort of things tend to happen with the collectors first, right? Because they're the guys that sort of the front pointy end. There's a guy in New York, Mr. Enthusiast, who's been collecting Patek two-handers. English photographer guy, Phil, who's been collecting these things for a long while, and we see with our workshop where we still take in 1 day a week of general maintenance of a bizarre range of watches, just to make sure that the guys are working on different things as well as just pair of watches. It's interesting for them. And they confirm, we used to see loads of Explorers, and then it was loads of, I guess Tudors and all that type of thing. And now suddenly people are coming in with Piaget 2-hand watches and going, can you bring this back to life? And I think they're at the pointy ends, the collectors, because essentially they're looking for something that generally is not available, right?
That's right. Interesting.
I hope they're right, because we backed.
It's a unique perspective. Obviously the goal for our podcast is to have a different perspective on every episode. And I feel like we've done a good job so far. But yeah, so a couple questions, and this is probably going to be a hard one. What, if you could choose one from your collection, which one would it be that you wore for the rest of your life, or your favorite fairer, and why?
Who's your favorite child, Paul? No, I'm just kidding.
It's super hard because possibly it's one that's going to come out at the end of this month.
Okay.
So, which is
to be determined.
But it's probably up to this point, it's the Bernina Blue, which is the Bernina that we made with a blue bezel. We only made 25 of them. And we probably made those because I liked it. So we made 25 Bernina Blues, so entirely stock Bernina, but with a navy blue ceramic bezel. Fantastic looking piece. That, and then the Cobb Mono Pusher.
That was the one that I was most interested in purchasing. And when I went to San Francisco, I was like, dude, where are the mono pushers? Where are the mono pushers? And then the guy was like, got one, and I'm like,
yeah.
That was Mike, by the way, who had the mono pusher on.
Yeah, Mike is a super good guy.
Mike and James, they're good guys.
It's hard for me because when you have as many watches as I do, like buying a watch can't be impulsive. That's how I ended up here. Right. Yeah. So I look at it from a different perspective, like which watch fits into my portfolio, my collection, and it doesn't have any overlap. Because if it does have overlap, it's just not going to get worn. So by the time it comes to an idea for me, and I'm like, okay, I want to introduce this watch to my collection. And then in your case, which is the reason why I don't have one of your watches yet, because they're gone by the time I've already decided,
Yeah. We do have that a lot. I'm thinking that a model is complete and finished and blah, blah, blah. And then somehow it gets into the circulation, and, this happened to the Seagrove Mono Pusher. It made me go into the archives, and we constructed 2 watches that we had enough spare components left, because the 2 people that wanted to buy them were so insistent that we found a watch down the back of the sofa, which wasn't going to happen. But I knew the parts were there because there'd been a mistake made and we overmade the parts. So we made just 2 additional Seagrove Mono Pushers. But those watches particularly, and the original chronographs, which 2 of the mechanics on the Netflix Formula One series are frequently seen wearing. And so whenever they pop up screen, we get a deluge of emails on, why don't you make the original Cobb with the Tag Heuer ETA 2894 movement? Why don't you make that anymore? Because I've just seen it on Drive to Survive, and I buy that.
I haven't seen that. I have watched all the episodes. I need to go back.
It was on actually one of the introductory screens. It was right across the screen. I know, because I got about 100 emails with a screenshot attached.
So you're gonna kick Bremont to the curb and bring your brand in?
No. God bless Bremont for being in a Formula One sponsor position. I wouldn't want to be doing that. That's open the window and throw the money out.
I guess if you were, you'd have to have yourself on a British racing team, huh?
That's right.
Well, most of them are British, fortunately, because we're pretty good at Formula One. Well, not so good at everything, but we're pretty good at Formula One.
Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and start wrapping this thing up. I've got one more question for you, Paul, and
Sure.
probably be done if that's all right. We don't want to take too much of your time. We want to be respectful. Where do you guys envision Fair Universal in the next decade? God. Do you guys plan on adapting, the changing landscape of the watch industry, and you want to keep on pursuing different things? Where do you see yourself?
I think it's probably really interesting that someone at some point said, the changing face of the watch industry. But what really has changed is the route to market or the way to communicate. But the actual watch industry hasn't changed at all, possibly. Yeah. I mean, inevitably there'll be those deep thinkers that, I think that's too simple. Yes, it has changed a lot. I'm not sure it has. What I think is the way to market is fantastic, and you couldn't have done this 10 years ago. But also, because you can do it, it doesn't make it easy. It makes it actually really hard to fall on. Really easy to fall on your face. You've got to have more than If we're searching through Spotify or Apple or other music providers are available, then you can find plenty of people that made one good album, right? But
That's
not
right.
so many bands like the Rolling Stones. Who's, by the way, the latest single is as good as anything they've ever made.
That's good to know.
Which is incredible.
Awesome.
So I don't know. I mean, making watches for people who want to buy them, hopefully, and I hope that the hobby retains, because it appears to be a good one. It does have its ecological issues, particularly around packaging, shipping around the world, blah, blah, blah. Make all your warranty cards from Thai plastic, don't use one, all of those things. And of course, the basic materials do, of course, emit CO2. But nevertheless, it is a less guilty pleasure than cars or boats or motorbikes or planes, and it's also very containable because of the size. So I would like to envisage that the watch community grows. Folks say to me, young kids don't want to wear watches anymore. The number of 21, 22, 18, 23-year-olds that I see and come and buy their first watch, that's not what it says to me.
Yeah, the movement is the canvas, and you guys are just throwing your own paint on it.
Yeah.
I disagree. I mean, watches are here for the long haul, obviously. And I think Jean-Claude Biver, like he said it very well. The rise of the smartwatch is the best thing for the watch industry, because it gets these kids used to wearing something, and then it's either going to grow or it's not. So it widens people up to what it is that you're doing, in our passion, our hobby, and there's nothing out there that is essentially a work of art that can be like, I can't hang a canvas as a necklace, like you can't wear any other art. Like there's nothing really except for jewelry, right? Maybe clothing, arguable, debatable. It is art, but not to me, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, something that's engineered, something that is art, and it's I think, and we talked in some of our other podcasts about if Omega, this goes back to what we talked to earlier. If Omega gave the customers what they wanted, there may not be a fairer, like playful, fun, exciting, unique, and kind of, pressing the bounds of what somebody would wear versus what they won't. So, we talked about that before. And yeah, I'm really excited for the future, because I'm going to be sticking along, just waiting to buy my first one. So hopefully,
I think that we should all not worry. I think the watch industry is going to be a very healthy thing. And although, you know, the watch industry isn't exclusively Swiss, you know, it's obviously Germany and Japan and other locations, you know, massive watchmaking school in Besançon, some growing folks in America, etc., etc. Shouldn't polarize it. But just excusing the polarizing, the Swiss don't ever appear to back anything that doesn't last forever. So there we go.
I could push back and say some of the Belgians are making some crazy watches, man. Crazy watches. Even the Dutch are making some cool stuff
I think we're seeing creativity from a lot of locations now, which is cool. The more global, the better.
That's right.
So the UK is the heart of watchmaking for you, huh?
No, I think that
that was a trick question.
I think it's global, isn't it? I think it's global. I mean, look, we're looking to repeat the enthusiasm of the communities in America and the Far East and the Middle East, which seems to be, you know, it's not as vibrant in the UK and Europe, you know, yet, but I think it is escalating quickly.
You got the beautiful colors for the gloomy days out there, huh?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Sunny side up.
Well, we're gonna wrap this up. We'd like to thank everybody for listening, of course. We'd like to thank Paul from Fairer.
Thank you.
Go buy your watches now while they're available. That's the what I took from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we'll I'm sure we'll have you on in the future, follow up, and you know, obviously be looking for the watches here at the end of the month, and
for sure.
And I want to thank you, of course, personally.
It was
I'm
a
sure
pleasure,
Justin
very
as well.
welcome, gents. Yeah,
a pleasure to have you on, and until the next time, we'll see you on that one.
Okay, cheers now.
Take care. Bye-bye.